Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily News. I'm Nicholas Richardson. North Korea has entered the war with Ukraine on the Russian side. This was the information provided by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, based on intelligence data. According to Kiev, the North Koreans are being trained at Russian training grounds and are being sent to the front lines fighting side by side with Russian criminals.
Panmunjom, the border base between the two Koreas. This is the only place where the two countries, which are formally at war, meet directly. The rest of the border is a demilitarized zone, manned on both sides by thousands of soldiers. At the behest of the North Korean dictator, dozens of bridges and roads connecting the two countries have just been blown up. Kim Jong-un has put the artillery and air force on alert and announced a strike to the south. The General Staff of the Korean People's Army has ordered combined artillery units along the border to prepare to open fire. This is an escalation like no other in decades. Despite missile tests and threats sent from the north against Seoul and Washington, D.C. What North Korea did today, blowing up inter-Korean roads on the north side, is a clear violation of the inter-Korean agreement, and we consider it a very immoral act. But it may be a direct result of actions the North Korean dictator is taking in a completely different direction. Moscow remembered its North Korean brethren less than 2 years ago, around the time of a review of its stockpiling capabilities. Faced with frontline supply problems, it turned to Pyongyang for help. The result was a massive supply of North Korean munitions to the front line in Ukraine. If there were no such deliveries, regardless of the discussion about the quality of these missiles, the Russians would no longer be able to shell Ukrainian positions so intensively. This is one important field of cooperation, but not the only one. According to Ukrainian intelligence, not only Korean weapons, but also people have arrived at the front. Trained at Russian training grounds, North Korean soldiers are taking part in the fight against Ukraine. Ukraine's Foreign and Defense Intelligence Service has outlined the Russians' intentions for the fall and winter. Everything was quite detailed, including North Korea's actual involvement in the war, as well as Russia's relations with other countries that are unfortunately invested in prolonging the war. That other country, alongside Korea, is Iran, which, without a shadow of a doubt, continues to supply Russia with armaments using the Caspian Sea routes. With the escalation of the conflict in the Middle East, analysts have estimated Iran's stockpile to be at least 3,000 ballistic missiles, with a capacity to produce several hundred a year.
A year has passed since Poland's parliamentary elections, which brought Donald Tusk back to power. The ruling coalition speaks of a period flowing with milk and honey, while the opposition speaks of a Poland reeling. How has this time passed, and what about the famous 100 specific promises for the first 100 days of government? Has anyone seen them? Are Poles living better in every home? Do they have more money in their pockets as promised before the elections?
Exactly 1 year ago, it was like this. I have never been so happy in my life with this supposed second place. Poland won, democracy won. We removed them from power. Right away, Poland was supposed to become a cool place where everyone smiled. Even before Donald Tusk took over the government, he outlined what his rule of law would look like. It will be according to the law as we understand it. The government took the oath of office on the 13th of December and immediately took off on a democratic kick. Just a week later, powerful people illegally took over the public media. The Entry Group was directly responsible for the takeover of the media. Among its members were the future illegal administrators of the public media, as well as, according to information from journalist Tomasz Marc, Magdalena Hodownik, girlfriend of a Russian spy, who immediately began working in the public television after the takeover. This is why I'm fighting for clarification of who was behind the Entry Group. Magda was with us, and that's it. I left. This was the beginning of breaking laws with the smile of Donald Tusk's coalition, which was initiated by Colonel Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz, the Polish Minister of Culture at the time, who oversaw this whole entry operation. Political revenge is certainly emblematic of this government. Despite Polish President Andrzej Duda's 2015 pardon, Donald Tusk's services detained parliament deputies Mariusz Kamiński and Maciej Wąsik in early January. The illegally detained politicians joined a hunger strike. Once it was clear that both would leave prison, the services force-fed Mariusz Kamiński as an unconventional form of torture. I was taken out of the cell, tied up with belts on the bed. Then they attempted to put a probe through my nose. In an act of protest against the government's lawlessness, the March of Free Poles passed through the streets of Warsaw on the 11th of January, bringing together hundreds of thousands of people on a weekday in the middle of winter. The government was afraid that it might face legal liability for its actions. That's why it illegally took over the National Prosecutor's Office in mid-January and made the entire state vulnerable to legal paralysis. On what grounds was the National Prosecutor dismissed? On the basis of the regulations, Article 47. Here I kindly inform the Minister, with full respect towards you, but I kindly inform you that your decision is unlawful and bears the hallmarks of committing a crime. A wave of agricultural protests has swept across Europe. The demonstrators opposed the European Union's climate policy and the uncontrolled import of agricultural products into community countries. The largest protest in Warsaw took place on March 6th in the form of a battle with the police, where officers used batons, gas, and water cannons to attack protesters. Police pacify protesting farmers in a violent manner. Gas was used on the people. The government also started a fight against the Justice Fund. Through it, the previous Law and Justice government brought modern equipment for volunteer fire departments. The illegal National Prosecutor's Office detained Father Michał Olszewski and two former Justice Ministry officials. According to their accounts, the detainees were tortured. When we arrived at the cell, I heard that there was nothing left at that hour, neither dinner nor water. I managed to beg for half a cup of tap water, brought in a bottle that stood empty in the cell. In the morning, when I asked to be led to a toilet, I was told you have a water bottle. In September, southwestern Poland was flooded. Donald Tusk's government was warned about the flood threat by both the European Commission and the Polish Institute of Meteorology and Water Management. However, the Prime Minister did nothing and falsely reassured residents instead of preparing evacuations. These projections are not overly alarming. Every example of lawlessness or plain indolence on the part of the government was publicized by our television. That's why the Prime Minister, breaking the law, won't let our TV station into press conferences. Who accredited you? Because you are not on the list. In two places, through the newsroom and the press room, and even through an email we sent from the editorial office to the Prime Minister's office. But you are not on the list, so you cannot enter. Nothing can be done about it? I can't do anything about it. I have top-down orders for the Prime Minister's office, and I only let in those people who are on the list. The Polish people are harshly judging Donald Tusk's rule. According to a poll by the Institute for Social Research and Market for Polsat TV, the Law and Justice Party is returning to the first place with 31.3% support, followed by the Civic Coalition, which 30.7% of respondents say they are willing to vote for. Finally, the Confederation Party closes off the poll with 9.8% support. The third way and the New Left would still be in the parliament.
It turns out the so-called election network, promoted by politicians from the December 13th coalition and the Strong Together movement, operates on principles similar to those of internet troll farms. The daily vitriol is coordinated by politicians from the Tusk coalition, including Roman Giertych and Radosław Sikorski. This is the result of an investigation by one of the X's users who went undercover in one of the troll farms. Ex-user Professor Penguin has revealed the results of his investigation. He went undercover and joined the election network founded by Polish MP Roman Giertych and exposed the methods used by the Strong Together movement. Each of its coordinators, of which there are at least a few but probably more, manages dozens of separate group chats of tens or hundreds of people, in which people are herded to promote their daily hashtags. The chats are numbered, like a sort of work camp. because all indications are that the election network is a top-down coordinated team of internet users, hiding behind anonymous accounts, operating with a clear purpose, to support the actions of the December 13th coalition and attack the opposition. The pressure there is immense. From the morning it's like a factory shift. The coordinator uploads an image with the hashtag of the day and the users start spamming and liking each other's posts. Everyone has to prove themselves by actively spamming the hashtag throughout the day and, of course, boosting the posts of the biggest gurus of the Strong Together movement. It may have seemed to many that only Poles themselves were producing this kind of commentary, and here you can see that it is a whole created system. Hate farms along the lines of those operating somewhere near Moscow or St. Petersburg. The exposure of the kitchen of the election network finally gives us an answer to the question of who is coordinating the offensive slogans appearing on social networks and distributed by Strong Together, attacking, among others, the cancer-stricken minister Zbigniew Ziobro. Current topics and hashtags are uploaded to the group by Mr. Giertych or Radosław Sikorski, so you need to pay close attention to our tweets. Roman Giertych, the creator of the election network, has been recruiting for a long time. It's a good day for a new recruitment drive for the election network. If anyone wants to join, I encourage you to write a comment under this post. The election network is the strongest association of free citizens. It turns out that the organizer of one of the groups used to spread this vitriolic hatred is none other than Roman Giertych. Such speculations had already been made. The network was active even before last year's elections. It also appears that one of the gurus and coordinators of the election network messages is Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski. A troll factory, unfortunately inspired by people who today try to be important figures in the world of Polish politics. And it turns out that they are just mediocre figures who simply try to heckle the right through the internet. After the revelation of the behind-the-scenes work of the election network group, its effectiveness has clearly decreased. There is no place for this kind of behavior. I hope this is the beginning of the end of this terrible activity. A year after the elections, there are not many issues that the smiling coalition government can boast about, so it seems that online heckling, in one form or another, is here to stay. Two candidates in one state at the same time. This shows the importance of Pennsylvania, home to up to 800,000 Americans of Polish descent, in this year's presidential election. Donald Trump told voters that he would fix the economy and quickly end the war in Ukraine. Kamala Harris spent her time talking about the rights of women and immigrants. With 3 weeks to go, Americans are still divided.
Pennsylvania is one of the key states in the race for the White House. It is home to many Americans of Polish descent.
Tell you what, our poll numbers have...
That's why both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump came to visit their constituents. The Republican, who has topped recent polls in Pennsylvania, spoke about the issues that keep many of his countrymen awake at night: the economy, a future for families, and security. Trump promised mass deportations of illegal immigrants and a quick end to the war in Ukraine.
The number of people dying in the Ukraine-Russia war is a far greater number than anybody knows. And Biden has done nothing about it. He hasn't even spoken to Putin in over a year. Know nothing about it. And this is a war that has to end, and we're going to get that war ended. I'm going to try, and I think I can, get it ended as president-elect.
More and more people expect the new president to deal with the most important issues, rather than just focusing on proxy issues.
So what I'd like to see is us not being involved in a bunch of world wars. I'd like him to be back so we can have peace in the world and not have all these proxy wars in places like Ukraine and Israel. For one, no new wars were started under him. So I'd also like prices to be affordable again.
A doctor, please. Doctor.
Donald Trump's rally ended earlier than planned because two of his supporters fainted and needed urgent medical attention. Kamala Harris focused on what she's been saying throughout her campaign: women's rights, minorities, and the rights of illegal immigrants. She says these are the most pressing issues facing America.
How you all vote, and thank you, because how you all vote in presidential elections often ends up predicting the national result.
But Kamala Harris's voters have different expectations.
Making decisions for their family, having wealth for their children, economic issues, cost of food, and so you don't want to offer like a carrot, you know, as a bait for people to vote for you and not really pay attention to what the issues are.
America today is effectively split down the middle. The candidates are offering very different visions of what they want the country to look like, at a time when the country is struggling with rising inflation, unemployment, and an uncontrolled influx of illegal immigrants.
These policies are an effort by the Harris campaign to reach out to Black men and tell them exactly what she plans to do if elected. Now, what the Trump campaign has said at times before is, what do you have to lose?
The votes of Pennsylvanians could prove decisive, including up to 800,000 Americans of Polish descent. In an interview with Republika, Donald Trump stressed how much he values Poland and the Polish people, and how much he counts on the votes of Polish Americans.
The Polish people could get out and vote for somebody that shares their values about things on religion and on life and on work and work ethic.
In just 3 weeks, the Americans will make their final decision.
That's the news. Thank you for watching, and from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.